is the beginning of another week. Good evening. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from Sabata Desawe Kanda, also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, the Chief Justice Gertrude Tokono submits her response to petition seeking her removal as President John Dramani Mahama consults with the Council of State to determine whether there is a case to answer or not. We've got details for you, plus some reactions tonight. And still on the matters of security, national security discovers suspected stolen electricity company of Ghana cables, meter boxes, and other materials in Takoradi in the Western region. We ask, does this have any link to the ECG missing containers and how things are playing out right now? Stay with us. There are some security matters we're going to spend some time on tonight. Also in politics, former Member of Parliament for the Dom Kwabenya constituency, Sarah Adwoa-Safo, at cross purpose with the party that she belongs to over an impending disciplinary proceedings against her. We'll tell you how things unfolded earlier today at the party's headquarters and what the implications really may be, and from the political perspective. We have eyes on how things are playing out, especially in the Ashanti region as well, where we're receiving some news of some cables as well belonging to the EC found there. Well, stay with us. We're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Well, let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
Chief Justice Gertrude Tokono has officially responded to petitions seeking her removal from office, meeting the deadline set by President John Dramani Mahama. Her written response was submitted to both the President and the Council of State on Friday, April 4, 2025, following a 10-working-day ultimatum issued after the petition was filed. The Attorney General's office is reviewing the case of murder suspect Gregory Afoko to decide whether or not to continue prosecution, despite being tagged a prime suspect in the murder of former Upper East Regional Chair Adams Mahama. The state has been unable to secure his conviction, with the last trial ending with a hanged jury. Speaking to journalists after court proceedings, Gregory Afoko, who is currently on a 500,000 Ghana cedis bail after spending almost a decade in remand, maintained that he is innocent.
Honestly, I can't tell, because from the onset, I have not committed anything. I have not committed a crime. They still kept holding me for all these years, 10 years. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I don't know what the judge will say.
The former Member of Parliament for Dome Kwabenya, Sarah Adwoa-Safo, has expressed disappointment over the absence of the MPP's disciplinary committee at a scheduled hearing into allegations of misconduct against her. According to her, she was not informed the meeting had been called off.
I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm a boy of 23 years standing, and I know what is proper. So when I received the letter, I always do just one day notice here to appear before the plenary committee.
The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, has called for a complete overhaul of mining policies and a stringent revision of the licensing regime. In his first official visits to the Commission, the minister warned any staff that becomes a hurdle in the restricting of the Commission will be dismissed.
A caution: if anybody here was going to stand in our way of these fundamental changes, you can start working out right now, because we will not let anybody be in the way, be a hurdle to this progress or this resetting agenda. And I can tell you also, if anybody who is in the Minerals Commission, who is a professional and committed and doing his work, being the right thing, everything that I've said, please, there's no one reason why you should worry, because this government doesn't have the time to come and do witch chanting.
The process to review the Road Traffic Regulation Act 2012 L2180 to incorporate motorized tricycles as fare-paying passenger services has begun. Minister of Transport Joseph Bukarinite believes that regulating operations of Okada riders in the country will help maintain sanity on the roads while creating job opportunities for the youth.
We are aware of some of the accidents that are related to the motorcycles and the tricycles. But we are also of the view that when proper training is given to them and they follow the regulations that we are going to amend today, we will see a reduction in accidents. For accidents, we cannot totally rule them out.
There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. And remember, we're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. Let's start off on this point. Let's go to the Western region and to the Ashanti region as well. That's coming up next, because the national security has discovered suspected stolen electricity company of Ghana cables, meter boxes, and other materials in Takoradi in the Western region. We ask, what exactly is happening? Does this have any link, really, to the ECG missing containers and the content in there? If you recall, after this announcement by the Energy and Green Transition Minister, John Jinapor, that over 1,300 containers belonging to the ECG cannot be traced at the ports, there's been subsequent discoveries of some of the containers in some part of the northern regions, here in the Greater Accra region. The contents of the containers as well, some of them have been seen in the central region. Now we're hearing as well in the western region today, national security operatives in the western region have uncovered stacks of ECG equipment at two sites at Kansarodo, a suburb in the center, that's the second-day Takoradi metropolis. This comes on the heels of this search for the containers, of 1,300 of them, and its content belonging to the Electricity Company of Ghana, which have gone missing at the Tema ports. Well, what you're seeing on the screen right now, right, are videos that we received from our correspondent, Abraham Mensah, who was neck deep with the national security operatives earlier today when they made these discoveries. Exactly where did they find these cables belonging to the ECG, and have any persons been arrested or questioned for this? This is one of the discoveries they made. Boxes of meters in a room. But then that was not the only one that they found in the western region. Now, there was another discovery. What you're seeing on the screen is also another set of cables belonging to the ECG in a bush. This area, described by our correspondent as a bushy area with these cables belonging to the ECG. How did they find themselves in there? These cables we're talking about. Now, what did the national security say about this? How did they discover this particular set of cables belonging to the ECG? And who is answering questions for what you're seeing on the screen right now, these cables in this bushy area, abandoned essentially? Now, that's what's happened in the western region. Now, let's go to the Ashanti region, because we also just got pictures not too long ago about some cables belonging to the ECG, again, found somewhere in the Ashanti region. We're going to tell you exactly where in the Ashanti region these cables were found and what the national security is saying about these cables found in the Ashanti region. So you see the difference in that. This is what you see, the conductors and some of these cables. Also, in the bushy area in the Ashanti region. So what's going on? But let's lay the basis for this. Our men on the ground in the area who've been following this quite closely are clothed with enough information. Abraham Mensah is our correspondent in the Western region. He moved every step of the way with the national security operatives earlier today who found what we have just showed to you. And William Evansinkum is our Northern Bureau Chief heading our Ashanti Regional Bureau there. Thank you, gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Hello?
Good evening.
Great. Abraham, I can hear you. William, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. I'll start with you, Abraham. Now, with the videos we just saw there, you moved with the national security today. Now, talk to us. The first discovery you made with the national security, with the boxes in the room, where did this happen and who's responsible for what we just saw?
So at about 3 p.m. today, we received a call indicating an operation being undertaken by the National Security Operatives at Cancer Road. So this is just a few meters towards the Methodist Senior High School Annex in Cancer Road. And it is some suspected items of the Electricity Company of Ghana. If I should detail, we are speaking about single-phase meter enclosures, some stretch fuses, electrical cables, about 7 bundles of them on the compound, and a few other electrical equipment that are purportedly to be used for meter installation and other extension works on behalf of the Electricity Company of Ghana. Upon investigation, the National Security Operatives uncovered that there was one gentleman who is the occupier of the building, Mr. Henry Appiah of Hedgemake Company Limited. Apparently, there were a few altercations because Mr. Appiah couldn't explain himself as to how he got to those items, but he got a bit of some rescue from a company purported to be the parent company that had subcontracted those works under the loss under the LRP program of the ECG.
That's the loss recovery program, right? Yeah.
Loss recovery program of the ECG. Mm-hmm. And according to him, this is a program being undertaken in Sekendi, Takrady, and the Daboase Enclave. So the ECG is fully aware about the work being undertaken by the company. The parent company here in question is MBH Power and Gas Limited. And the supervisor was being interrogated by the National Security Operatives. His name was given as Evans Latte. And according to him, he's gotten enough documentations about it. He did indicate that even the boxes that were under investigation had labels of their company on it. Yes, there are a number of them we saw with those labels, but there weren't enough evidence to point to the fact that some items belonging to the ECG were rightfully handed over to the company. He issued some way bills, actually, but there was nothing concrete enough to convince the National Security Operatives as to whether or not ECG genuinely had engaged the company for such works. So that was for site 1. For site number 2, they also had received intelligence through some neighbors within that enclave. So this is just about 20 meters.
Hold on a bit for me, Abraham. So the site 1 is the one that has the meter boxes and then the other cables we saw in the room. So this NBH, indeed. Yes, this NBH person, was he arrested by the National Security, questioned, and has he been released? If so happened?
So they actually were to lead a team to their warehouse in Sekendi. Unfortunately, we followed them through to the Regional Coordinating Council at Sekendi, and there they were handcuffed for a couple of minutes and later released. The National Security Operative tells us that they've handed the matter over to the CID, mainly to confiscate those items for further investigation.
I see. So now let's move to the second site. That's the where you went to find the cables in the bush.
Yes, there were 41 of them which were untouched, 41 fully coiled bundles of electrical cables, including fiber cables. These were aluminum and fiber cables. There were also, angle iron bars, which mainly are used for power extensions, and a few other electrical equipment stashed in that bush. So there were 5 of them which, by every measure I could tell, had been tampered with, either by thieves or by whoever brought in those items. Unfortunately, some residents who were there couldn't tell who those properties or those items belonged to, and who that parcel of land also belongs to. This is a matter of an interest to the national security, and they've promised to pursue that to its conclusion. So as it stands today, for those 41 drums of electrical cables that were found at the second site are to be confiscated for further investigations. They are yet to tell who brought in those items and even when they brought in those items, and to see how they could proceed with their investigation.
I see. Now, so you talk about these 41 full drums of these cables, and the people who are living in the area didn't identify who, or couldn't identify who came to dump them there. Any indication how long these cables have been there? Did the National Security ask, and did they get any answers to those questions?
So I did put that to the National Security Operative, Mr. Tanko Nuhu, and he indicated that they are yet to know who brought in those items, when they brought in those items, and even to the fact that who owns that parcel of land. This is approximately a 2-plot size of a land in the middle of a burdened, community in Cancer. It's quite a new site. So yes, we did question a number of residents in the area, but it appears they are a bit apprehensive to divulge any form of information, and I believe the national security will take this up further.
I see. And Abraham, stay with me, because William Evans Income is also connecting with us from the Ashanti region. And I showed you pictures as well of this other area where some cables belonging to the ECG were also found somewhere in the Ashanti region. Where exactly, William, were these cables found by the national security?
Well, so this was found at an uncompleted house in Kote, or at Kote. And I would describe the operation as a botched one because whilst they were interrogating the ECG, an officer from the ECG came around, and according to an operative from the National Security, he had convinced them that there was a documentation to this particular 125 drums of cable, and he had been asked to produce the documents tomorrow. So they had to abandon this particular operation. So that was the situation in the Ashanti region.
I see. So this is indeed confirmed that these cables belong to the ECG, but then again, it has some documentation covering it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they've been asked to produce the document tomorrow.
I see. And we'll wait tomorrow. I know you're very heavy on this particular one, and so we're going to connect with you tomorrow for some more details on this. But we've got pictures of those cables as well that were found in this uncompleted building. Quite a number of them as well in that particular area that William Evans Income talked about. And Abraham, so did the National Security give you an indication that it's an operation that they're going to continue, and especially because of what happened today, how swift this is going to be to ensure that people who might just now be moving to cover their tracks may be caught within their tracks, really?
So what I understood from Mr. Tanko is that they've been, dispatched to do a number of, search at some suspected areas. and based on some intelligence, they would also receive from national and then from the Western region. So they are quite keen on, getting to the bottom of this particular matter and to any other suspected cases they may chance on. The other development to this whole story is that we got in touch with a reliable source at the ECG who confirmed that yes, indeed they have some contractual relationship with MBH Power. However, they couldn't confirm the fact that they released some items that could end up with a third-party contractor at a private residence. So that is a matter of contention here with the national security. So the questioning processes concerning the safekeeping of these items, and then again, whether or not there could be any documentation to validate claims concerning the relationship between ECG and MBH, and then with MBH with the third-party contractor, which is Hedge Company Limited.
Abraham, appreciate you for this. Thank you so much for that detail. So these are men on the ground who are following all of this every step of the way. So stay with us here on TV3 and across all major journal platforms. Abraham Mensah is a correspondent in the Western region, and William Evansinkum in the Ashanti region. There are more questions that the national security is asking of these persons as to how these Electricity Company of Ghana cables found its way in the uncompleted houses, in bushes, as we have seen, showing you those videos, and then also in some of these rooms where the meter boxes, a number of them were found. Ben Boache is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. So Boache, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. I mean, after this announcement of these missing containers, it's either we wake up to the news of the containers being found somewhere or the contents of the container being seen somewhere. What do you suspect is going on?
Yeah, Alfred, thanks. I mean, first of all, if those containers were actually imported into Ghana, what it essentially means is that the containers are here, or the items that were in the container are in the country. So we would find them in various warehouses for various applications. We do know that if there are cables, if you want to use the cables, the only thing you can do is to use them to extend electricity. And given that only few companies do that, people will have other uses for it. And that's why we've seen some of the goods, finding their way into aluminum smelters and being converted into billets. So to the extent that the containers are in Ghana, if we search, we'll find them in the country. And I'm sure that is what is actually happening across the country. What we need to find out is whether, it was through the auction process that got the goods into different hands, or through the port, some of the goods were smuggled out somewhat to the various destinations and locations that we are finding them at this point. But I would say that if they were indeed imported, then we shouldn't be surprised that they are found in many locations across the country.
Absolutely. That's for certain. But the issue here is where the content of these containers and the containers themselves are being found, isn't it? I mean, in warehouses, and then what we've seen tonight, some of the cables in bushes and uncompleted buildings. That's suspicious and concerning, is it not?
I think if the investigations kick in, or if they are already, I'm sure the security forces would need to perhaps engage the public for an extensive disclosure of where anybody may have cited some of these containers. At this point, my instinct would be that if you had these containers in your warehouse or in your home, you would be wondering whether you are the next to be visited by the security agency. So you may find people trying to dump them somewhere or quickly convert them before they are caught, handling, these consignments directly. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of them dropped in bushes and locations where you can hardly connect to individuals. But that also requires that we are swift in how we track down these containers, which should be possible. We should know who authorize the exit of any container and be able to track it down to wherever they may be, even if they are found in the bushes at this point. So I think we'll leave that to the security agencies, but to keep our eye on the ball to make sure that the promised investigation actually happens. And we're able to get credible information on where each of the containers actually went to, and be able to quantify what the loss to that extent is, from this. So for civil society, and the media, we have to keep our eye on the ball to track it down, engage the security agencies, get the bill of lading of all the containers, how they left the port, who are the ones who actually took possession of the containers before they left the port, and be able to do a decent job of tracking them down.
Right, but what we're saying, some of them also are procurements by the Energy Ministry, because we have a video, as we're scrolling, you'll see that inscription on one of the cables, at least, that we got on camera. It was a procurement by the Energy Ministry, and then some of them as well, the ECG, in the bush, the cables in the bush. What does that tell you?
We are doing a hard job instead of starting from the simple part. As I indicated, if you had these containers or cables with you, you would want to find a way to escape the law and also the security agency. So I'm sure people are reacting and dumping them in the bushes. Let's begin by tracking the containers. I think that's the basic information we need at this point. When the containers terminated in Ghana, when they exited the port, that is data that should be readily available, and who took possession of those containers when they exited the port. The security agencies shouldn't go beyond this immediately. It will be good to track them if you get information where they are and be able to retrieve them. But what we need to be briefed, perhaps on a daily basis, is who took the containers out of the port. Was it auctioned to them, or somebody smuggled them out of the port? We need to get those specific issues answered immediately, and then we can then zoom into locating them through the intel information that will be given from tracking how they exited the port. Begin to trace them to specific individuals who may have, purchased or taken possession through smuggling.
So you talk about tracing, because as you there's paper trail, obviously, as to who authorized the auction, who bought, and at what price these containers were auctioned, where were they moved to. But Samuel Dubik Mahama last week, the former ACG boss last week, tells me that the GRA, I beg your pardon, were the ones who auctioned these containers belonging to the ECG because the ECG owed GRA. And so if, for instance, you want to find out who auctioned and how these containers move from the port, GRA should be answering some questions right now.
I think those are very separate points. I think why we want GRA to answer the question is not for them to deal with the procurement and the responsibility of ECG, making sure that once you import a container, you clear it. It's your duty to clear it. All right? If you import anything, if Alfred imports a car and you don't go for the car, GRA has the power to auction it to recover his money. So to that extent, the auctioning of the container cannot be faulted, because there are processes, there are timelines for clearing your goods. What we want to know is whether indeed they were auctioned, and if they were auctioned, who bought them. Can we go to those people and say, okay, these things were auctioned to you at a cheaper rate, can we get it back and pay you? Because these are legal processes. And when somebody has been irresponsible of clearing their goods and kept importing, recurrently, those are the fundamental issues that we need to address. But as to how it got out of the port, it's really an academic exercise if it is not stolen. If it was stolen out of the port, then it's a bigger conversation. If it was auctioned because they did all they could, waiting for ECG to come and clear their goods, and they didn't, they had to auction them. And that is a fair process to go through as far as GRA's processes are concerned. But that's why over the weekend I was saying that we have to separate the issues. How did we get ourselves into procuring so much and lacking the capacity to actually clear them? Where indeed the goods are much more valuable than how much it takes to actually clear them from the port. Whose negligence was it that they kept importing and not pay attention to clearing them from the port? Those are fundamental issues in fixing the fiscal mayhem that are always extended to the budget of Ghana, and be able to address it effectively. Then we can go to the issue of tracking down who bought the containers, whether they were auctioned, or if they were not auctioned, who stole them. Those are different conversations.
Certainly so. And as the investigations proceed, we'll see, in fact, demanding answers to these questions, germane questions that you ask. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Ben Boache is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, on the former civil society organization that we have in the energy space in this country and beyond. But coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, the former Dom Kwabena Member of Parliament, Sarah Joaf-Safo, is at cross purposes with her party over an impending disciplinary proceeding against her. We'll tell you how things unfolded earlier today and what really the implications are, especially for the new patriotic party. That's the fundamental question that it is being asked right now as a result of how things played out at the party's headquarters earlier today. So that is one thing that we're going to spend some time on and also keep the steam on here on Ghana Tonight. I want to take a look at what has been indeed playing out right now with respect to the responses that have been given to Sarah Joaf-Safo and the concerns that she raised. The General Secretary of the party, Justin Ponkodia, is quoted specifically on an interview that he granted on Channel 1 in that, quote, "Our priority now is the alleged drug trafficking scandal, not internal party politics. Ghanaians deserve answers from government." Goes on to say, "We expect transparency, accountability, and clarity on the matter," essentially. So really, that question that was asked of him about whether or not the party is going to pay some attention to the issues with Sarah Joaf-Safo. Well, subsequent to that, there was a letter actually that was signed by him inviting Sarah Joaf-Safo for a meeting with the disciplinary committee today. Well, we're learning afterwards that this meeting was postponed. Sarah Joaf-Safo was at the party's headquarters earlier today as scheduled by the said letter, which was made public yesterday. This is what happened at the party's headquarters. Take a look.
It's for the disciplinary committee here.
Yes, exactly. I'm here because of that. I received a letter yesterday on my way from the gym, which I assume was a weekend. Legally, weekends and public holidays are not proper days, properly so called, to serve someone any official duties. But I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm a lawyer of 23 years standing, and I know what is proper. So when I received the letter, no, it's just one day notice. I'm here to appear before the disciplinary committee. So I'm going up, and when I'm done, probably we'll talk again.
Meaning you've not met anybody yet?
I just got in.
Haven't you heard of information that that meeting has been suspended?
I haven't been personally served. So when you...
Well, so that's a former Dom Kwabena Member of Parliament, Sarah Joaf-Safo, the former Deputy Majority Leader during the period when the MPP held a majority in Parliament. But you heard her say that she wasn't served with respect to this decision by the party to suspend this scheduled meeting with the disciplinary committee earlier today. Well, that a question was asked of Haruna Mohammed, who's the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, granted an interview on Joy News, and this is what he said. I'm going to put that on the screen. Specifically says, I can confirm that a letter was delivered to her regarding the postponement, and he personally received her at the party headquarters today because they were holding a separate meeting on electoral matters from the 2024 general elections. And while there, he heard some noise outside and went to find out what was happening. It turned out she had come in response to the earlier invitation. So the noise that he talks about, as you saw on the screen, is Adwoa Safo and some persons who were described as members of the New Patriotic Party with her at the party headquarters earlier today. Dr. Jonathan Asantiochiri is a political analyst and also a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. This is the position of the party that indeed they wrote to her, notifying her of the suspension today. Adwoa Safo says, well, I did not receive this notice. I wasn't served. That's her position as against the word of the party. How do you see things playing out?
Well, certainly, let me say good evening to your viewers and to your good self. I wouldn't mince words on this. It is just quite unfortunate that the party just backtracked at the 11th hour, realizing that that decision that they had taken was quite unpopular. Now, I see that as very strategic on the part of the party and its executives, including the General Secretary or the Deputy General Secretary, to backtrack on this. I think that it is a mixture of cowardice and strategy, political strategy, because if you look at the clout that the lady has within the party, then obviously, and the kinds of emotional vituperations that she put out there in the public domain, especially things that were very much personal, then it meant that she had quite a number of people who seem to identify with the sentiment. Therefore, if the party is supposed to go on that tangent, then the party will rather lose face. And that in itself is not good for a party that is already hemorrhaging. And so you need to pull the brakes and ensure that you do not bleed or ooze blood any longer. And so that is how I see it, because there is no way the aide of Adwoa Safo will not inform, his or her superior that this is the letter I've received. Besides, these days, it can just easily be electronically delivered. We do not have any evidence to that effect. We know that in the public domain, she was invited to appear before the disciplinary committee today. So if you really wanted her not to come, then certainly you ought to have used the same channel to inform her. Now, either she just wanted a public stunt to test and send a message to the party stalwarts, or in actual fact, it is an afterthought on the part of the party hierarchy to say that they had sent a letter to that effect through the aide, which I believe that it is not a truism. I think it is more of a falsity than a truism with respect to what the party seems us to believe.
Well, we don't have any information to the contrary, but then again, I mean, to the extent that we saw some persons who have been described as members of the MPP with her, cheering her on, and essentially expressing their support for her at the party headquarters earlier today, when she had gone there to face the disciplinary committee. What signal should that be sending to the party, I mean, from where you sit?
Well, she has clout. In actual fact, I do not foresee the MPP winning back that seat, Domiko Abenya, without the input and the support of Christo Asafo. I don't see that happening. And so if you are dealing with somebody of that nature and caliber, I think you ought to be very strategic. And of course, they have resources. She has resources. And you know, the politics of today is more driven by resources than merely good ideas. Yes, the ideas are there, but you need resources to push those good ideas for people to buy into that. And so she comes with that particular leverage. And that is the more reason why some weeks back, when these stories began developing, I said that the first letter that the General Secretary wrote was in good faith and in good taste. But the second one, inviting her for a disciplinary committee hearing, was something that was hastily done. I do not know which people he consulted before he took that particular decision, because he ought to have read in between the lines to see that this was a healing process for the woman. And he could have just taken his phone to place a call to her and tell her, I am really appreciative of the way you are going about this, but can you really tone down on the SSS, ABC, and that would have been fair. I am of the view that when the party heard her say something about school feeding corruption and that of the e-levy, that struck to the core, at the core of the party itself. And that in itself, the party took offense. They were not happy with that particular, because obviously, if tomorrow that issue comes up, as far as the Attorney General is concerned, then some people will have questions to answer. So I think that was the more reason why the party hierarchy, intervened. But it was hastily done. They could have done so by intervening behind the scenes so that she could have toned down. If they could have appreciated the fact that what she was doing was more or less, to her, for me, as a healing process, because you could see the personal sentiment therein as far as the storyline was concerned. And so I think that what the party did, for me, I see it more as a strategic move, because if she had gone to the disciplinary committee today, I think a Pandora box will have opened.
I see, but we have a copy of the said letter communicating the postponement of this disciplinary committee meeting as the Deputy General Secretary referenced. And this is what you see on the screen there. Postponement of scheduled appearance before the disciplinary committee. And this was written as of yesterday, April 6th. So Adjosafo says she did not receive a copy of this letter. Says, I bring you warm greetings from National Secretariat, further to our earlier correspondent dated March 24, with reference number, as I put there, inviting you to appear before the disciplinary committee on Monday, April 7. We should notify you that the said hearing has formally been postponed. Emerging scheduling adjustments and internal considerations necessitated this decision. Once rescheduled, we'll notify you promptly of the new date and time for the hearing. And goes on to say they appreciate the anticipated cooperation and reaffirm the party's commitment to upholding discipline. Since you talk about strategy, what will be the best strategy for the party to apply the discipline as enshrined in the party's constitution, go through the motion and the process, or, as you say, forget about it and forge ahead for the unity of the party?
Let sleeping dogs lie. We are all, it is more of politics. With time, people will forget about that particular issue. With time, she will definitely discontinue that trend of politics. That in itself could easily kill the story. And then people will rather be focusing on the bread and butter issues of the day. Other than that, I tell you what, there are 1,000 and 100-fold of or within the MPP that have been terribly aggrieved, against the former president, President Akufo-Addo, and probably that of Dr. Bawumia, because obviously he is a protege of the president, the former president. And so people have stories to tell. People felt that they were in government, but they were in opposition. And so it is just a matter of time that people will begin to vent their spleen against the party hierarchy, and especially the former president. That is why some time ago I said on your platform that President Akufo-Addo will be the most miserable ex-president within the MPP party some years to come. And you see, once the NDC government leadership of President Mahama and that of the, Professor Nana Jino Pokuajiman, and through the Attorney General, if this, issues of corruption, the scandals, they begin to unravel them, as a way of correcting the wrongs of the past, then you will see why President Akufo-Addo's approval rating was 22% come November 2024. So people wouldn't want to associate themselves or identify themselves with the former president.
Yes.
Because that in itself will have been a bad baggage. No two ways about that.
Okay.
And so now people will be driving towards a new force. The current executive themselves, they stand a lot more to lose than anybody else. And I see a tsunami coming up. Most likely, they will be cleared off when they go for the internal, elections. Maybe one or two that they feel are innocent or they stood for the party in those times. And they were not just merely tying the apron strings to the former president and that of the vice president. So strategy-wise, if you asked me, it is either they let sleeping dogs lie, they don't speak about it. If she goes out there to speak, we ignore her. With time, she will discontinue on those rantings.
I appreciate you for this. Thank you for your thoughts as always. Dr. Jonathan Asantoship for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. We do not know as yet when this said meeting will take place, but we'll keep an eye on how things play out in the coming days. He's a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast, a political analyst as well. We're back shortly after this quick break. Coming up next, Chief Justice Gato Tukono submits her response to petition seeking her removal as President John Dramani Mahama consults with the Council of State to determine whether there's a case to answer or not. We've got details for you tonight. Dennis Popberry-Wadam is going to be joining me after this quick break. Stay with us. has petitions, 3 of them seeking her removal from office, meeting the deadline set by President John Dramani Mahama. Sources close to the matter confirmed to TV3 that the Chief Justice submitted her written response to both the President and the Council of State as of April 4, that's on Friday. This follows the 10-day working period ultimatum given to her by the President after the petition was filed. Dennis Baberi Wadam Esquire is joining me here. Dennis, what are the timelines specifically and how things have played out to now?
Well, so it would appear that the Chief Justice is working with the timeline that she herself requested for rather than what the President has given her. I mean, based on what we have been able to gather, that she has submitted her response as far back as Friday.
Yes.
That would have been on the 7th day. You know, she requested for 7 days to be able to give a response.
Yeah.
The President gave her 10 days, but she was able to do that on the time that she actually requested. But this takes us back to where it all came from, the 25th of March, where we got a communication from the Presidency indicating that the President had received some 3 petitions and had forwarded same to the Council of State. But we would later find out that these 3 petitions, 2 of them were submitted in February and 1 in March, and those were the subjects of all the discussions that were going to follow. Now, 2 days after that, that's 2 days after 25th of March, which is 27th of March, there was a lot of conversation, many raising legal questions as to why the President would receive the petitions and forward them to the Council of State and even begin some consultation processes.
That's right.
And this was important because the President was not just going to consult the Council of State. As part of that consultation process, they were going to determine whether there's a case to be made, what is, popularly called the prima facie case.
Yes.
And for many, they thought that the Chief Justice had to be heard. She had to even be notified of the existence of the petitions and to get to see what the content are so she could respond to that. And that was what culminated into the filing of 2 lawsuits, which essentially were to the effect that that conduct by the President, by virtue of forwarding the petitions to the Council of State and to even to begin that process of consultation in itself was unconstitutional, so they wanted the Supreme Court to declare it as such.
I see.
They even went as far as filing injunction processes to seek to injunct the process until the determination was made on the substantive matter as to the constitutionality of that particular matter.
But in most of the time, the Chief Justice, according to them, had not been notified or, as it were, given the pleasure of knowing the details of the petition.
Yes.
So what makes of this particular injunction in court, which is going to be determined on Wednesday?
Yes.
So
mind you, as at the time they were making these applications, as it would show later, the Chief Justice was not in the known of the petitions.
Yeah.
She didn't see the petitions, as she herself had written on the 27th to the President, requesting for copies and asserting her right to be heard and also to be given that opportunity to respond. So that clearly was an indication that indeed, as at the time that these plaintiffs were in court, the Chief Justice was not in the known of the petitions. But yes, that's an instructive question that you answered, because the matters to be determined largely had to do with the question of whether the President had to give the Chief Justice a hearing before that consultation process or as part of that consultation process. The President would also indicate in a letter that was also written to the Chief Justice that on this day that the Chief Justice was requesting for a copy of the petitions, the President has also got a green light from the Council of State to give the Chief Justice that opportunity to make an input.
Right.
So when you look at it, it does appear that the issue itself had been solved. But when you look at it from other sides, to think that the Chief Justice herself was asking for 7 days, the President has given 10 days, you never can tell what future under fire CJs would ask for.
True.
So, for many, they think that let's let the process continue, let a clear determination be made, just so we know that this was not something that somebody just did voluntarily, but the law actually requires that you do so. However, when you want to look at it from the point of that the suits were mounted on the fact that she was not given a hearing, and now she's been given a hearing, the question of mootness of the action would arise.
True.
But that largely will be a determination for the court to make on Wednesday. No, Wednesday would be the hearing of the injunction.
Right.
But the substantive matter itself, we don't know when they're going to start the hearing.
Perfect.
But on Wednesday, we will get to see how the path is going to be like for this particular matter. But of course, the plaintiffs themselves also have an option. If they think that their reliefs have been granted already, they can just withdraw the processes if they deem it fit. So, I mean, Wednesday is a big day for us. We are looking forward to that. And also, we also know that Wednesday is also a big day for you because it's your birthday. So yes, we'll put all of those things together and see what Wednesday has for all of us.
The courts will be our focus. But
yes, and the party too is going to be on Ghana Tonight.
Indeed. But anyway, but that's how it wraps it all up. And then what we're hearing today as well, because the details of the response obviously wouldn't be at the pleasure of the public. It's a process
Certainly.
that was going to...
Of course, the whole process is supposed to be an in-camera proceeding. It's the reason we are not even privy to what is contained in the petition and all the correspondence. But as news people, we try as much as possible to get what the public, at least, need to know when it comes to some of these things happening.
Good stuff. And stay with us on Ghana Tonight, because in the coming days, you see a lot more of these legal explanations to the barest minimum for the understanding of the ordinary Ghanaian, who, so that we can help you follow us every step of the way. Dennis Baberi Wadam, Esquire, as always, is going to be here with me on Ghana Tonight. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. Make some time to join the New Day team tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and then also the Sunrise team on 92.73 FM, also beginning 6 a.m. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do thank you so much for staying with us. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by